It's good to have you back. Now, South Africa is a country rich with heritage. The vibrant Cape Malay community is one such group, and Daiyaan Petersen has been researching the Cape Malay and Muslim communities. Well, he joins me now from Cape Town to take this discussion even further. Mr. Petersen, thank you so much for your time, and happy heritage to you. I know that you've been researching quite a lot on the Cape Malay community. What can you tell us about this rich community and its heritage?
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me. Yeah, so regarding the Cape Malay community, sure, there's really so much to talk about. It all started, I suppose, with our political exiles that were sent here in the late 17th century, and they really pioneered so that Islam can remain in this land. Because at the time, Islam was outlawed, and sometimes it was actually punishable by death. One could be broken by the wheel, in that your body would be tied to a wheel and you would be stretched until your bones were broken. You would be given sometimes the coup de grace or killed while that was happening so that you would not suffer. Or sometimes you would be left without the coup de grace and you just have to suffer, sometimes for days on end, without given that mercy, so to speak.
Sure.
But the community that I am researching is mostly the 19th century Muslims, which, you know, they are coming towards the end of slavery, the new British period, where they are standing on the shoulders of these political exiles and the slaves that came before them, the slaves that kept the prayers that you hear in the Burqa till today, in the singing tone. They kept it alive, and they created these establishments. They created madrasas or Muslim schools, which were actually scattered throughout Cape Central, in Hout Street, in Castle Street, in Hanover Street, in these little houses of these, you know, early free black or freed slave Muslims. They would host pupils, students, slave brothers and sisters, slave mothers, slave aunts, you know, those that had some knowledge. They would teach them about Islam, and they would really keep the religion alive. And this is also where we see a lot of the cemeteries being established. We see on Rondebosch Common, a Malay cemetery. We see in Newlands Avenue, in Simonstown, in Muizenberg, in Cork Bay, in town, we know the Tanabaru in the Burqa. There was even one off High Level Road in town. And that's all these establishments that they created so that there could be some sort of equality for themselves and some sort of freedom for themselves in this land.
If I could just jump in there, I mean, you made mention that, I mean, this is history that dates back centuries, many years ago. And I just wonder, how easy or difficult is it for one to research their heritage as well as ancestry in South Africa?
Sure. As someone coming from a mixed background, I'm privileged to be able to research on my white side, which is incredibly easy. I mean, almost all of the information is sitting right there in the archives, waiting for me to open them. But on my Malay side, which is, you know, the majority of my family, it is incredibly difficult. I mean, sometimes, you know, many of them, they were slaves. There aren't slave records which tie them to their parents or sometimes to their children. Because as a slave, if I have a child, my child will be taken away from me. So for many Malay and colored families around South Africa that come from the slave community, our ancestry, so to speak, it basically stops in 1834 to 1838, where the slave period ended. And the registration of births and deaths only came about in 1895. And because our people didn't really matter to the British at the time, before 1895, there's no record of those free people. So it is incredibly difficult. And so what I do, I rely on some of we call them kitabs. It's books written in the Javanese and Arabic Afrikaans and so on. And in there, often the author, he would record his own name and his parents' name and sometimes his grandfather's name. And, you know, translating the Javanese and the Arabic Afrikaans, we can actually trace back this and try to find an early link to perhaps a free black forefather, because some of the free blacks, they own property, and, you know, they built themselves up as Malay artisans, as painters, as carpenters, as the women were washerwomen or wasvrouwens, as they were known. They would take the washing up to the Plattekloof stream and wash it, and that's how they earned their keep. Yeah.
Sure, I have to say this is quite fascinating indeed, and I appreciate you speaking to us and sharing, briefly about the Cape Malay community. Daiyaan Petersen, he's a researcher, of course, and has researched the history of the Cape Malay community.